Cévennes, between the Mediterranean and the Massif Central. Here, people live with the rhythm of the seasons. Unspoiled nature, with rivers that flow into the Atlantic and into the Mediterranean. A region with an extraordinary history and a rich natural environment. This is one of the largest national parks in France. Its flora and fauna are unique, and people here are passionate about protecting it. The Cévennes offer something to discover in every season. It's early January. Mont Aigoual, at 1,567 meters, is the second highest mountain in the Cévennes. On its summit sits the last weather station in France where meteorologists still work all year round. In winter, violent storms often rage. The road to work then becomes a challenge for the employees. The access road can only be kept clear with a snowplow. Christian has been working up here for 23 years.
Yesterday the road was clear. Today it's covered with snow. The wind picked up during the night and there were heavy snow drifts. It's impossible to get through. So we had to call in the snowplow.
The station stands like a fortress against the weather. It was opened in 1894 after 7 years of construction. Christian's colleague, Remy is working with him at the station this week. He checks the measuring instruments on the roof several times a day.
I'm checking to make sure there's nothing clogging up the gauge. This measures the amount of rain or melted snow. It falls in here, and then we measure how many millimeters have fallen. At the moment, there are gusts of over 110 kilometers per hour here. The ice seals the openings. The instruments inside measure the temperature and humidity. But the air must be able to circulate.
Christian also gets to work despite the dangerous hurricane. In the storm, he has to be careful not to be blown over. Samples used to measure ice formation have to be taken to the laboratory. This data provides information about the thickness, type, and speed of ice growth. The original records, the first ones dating back to 1895, are kept in an archive on Mont Aigoual. It's a treasure trove of information. There were no meteorologists back then. Until 1943, foresters lived here with their families and kept a record of the weather.
2 years ago, I met an old lady. Her father was a forester here in 1929. She was very emotional. She had tears in her eyes. We tried to find her father's records in the books, but found nothing. We could not identify her father's handwriting.
The snowstorm rages on. Again, the snowplow clears the access road. There is plenty of firewood, just in case. Remy checks the food supplies.
When we arrive here, we never know when we'll be able to get back home. It depends on the weather. If our colleagues are outside and have problems with their equipment and a storm comes up, we stay here. I've had to stay on an extra 24 hours. Christian, even an extra 15 days.
Rémi Marguet has been working at the weather station for 14 years. It's a special place to work at, despite the extreme weather conditions here on the summit. The data that has been collected here for over 100 years leaves him in no doubt that humans are responsible for climate change.
Jusqu'aux années 90,
until the 1990s, temperatures were roughly below the annual average. Since then, the situation has changed. The average annual temperatures have been above the norm.
The next day, the storm still hasn't let up. Christian is responsible for the tests on various materials that they carry out on behalf of private companies. The extreme weather, with its temperature fluctuations, provides ideal conditions for these endurance tests. Days like today are also an endurance test for Christian.
I'm sprinkling salt on the concrete slabs. We're doing exactly what they do on the roads when the weather is bad, like today. Whoops, there goes my cap. Today is very windy, almost 100 kilometers per hour with temperatures of minus 8 degrees centigrade. But in the wind, it feels like minus 27 or so.
The State Weather Service, Météo France, is now planning to keep the station unstaffed during the winter months, between November and April. Sometimes the staff feels as though they are the last guardians of Mont Aigoual. In February, the snow has already disappeared. 7 rivers flow through the Cévennes. This is supposedly how the region got its name. In the Occitan language, sept veines means 7 veins. The Hérault River originates on Mont Aigoual and flows down into the Mediterranean. The Tarn River rises inconspicuously on a plateau of Mont Lozère, the highest mountain of the Cévennes. It has carved out spectacular gorges and flows down into the Atlantic. The Mediterranean and the Atlantic watersheds run through the middle of the Cévennes. The crystal clear waters provide the perfect habitat for a new inhabitant. Humans have helped it by building small dams. The beaver is back. Beaver lodges can be found all along the Tarn River. At the beginning of the 20th century, beavers were considered almost extinct in the Cévennes. In 1977, 13 beavers were reintroduced. Since then, the population has stabilized. Beavers are thought of as nature's great landscape architects. They play a vital role in the ecosystem. Their work is impressive. When human-built dams fail, beaver-built ones succeed. They slow down the flow of water in rivers and the rate of soil erosion. They also provide protection from flooding and a habitat for many other animals. The life of a beaver is not without its dangers. Here on the Tarn, this beaver watches the river carefully. An otter has invaded its territory. Female beavers become pregnant in February and give birth in April or May. The beaver is alarmed. The otter disappears again for the time being. The beaver swims towards its lodge. A little later, the otter reappears right at the entrance to the beaver's lodge. Could it smell the pregnant female beaver? Conflicts between beavers and otters are very rare. But this otter shows an unusually strong interest in the beaver's lodge. The beaver keeps its distance. The otter departs. February is also the time when goats give birth to their offspring. The kids need all the milk, so pélardon cheese, that famous delicacy of the Cévennes, cannot be made for the moment. Rens Chabrier and her husband Bertrand have been up since the early hours of the morning to help with the births. The newborn kid is doing well. Rens, who has worked in agriculture since she was 15, is always relieved when everything goes well. After the birth, the baby goats are weaned directly from their mothers.
Now we give her the bottle.
This means the goats can be milked sooner and cheese can be made again.
Normally, we can expect 120 baby goats. We treat them all the same. The bottles with the first milk, the colostrum, the disinfecting, and after that they will stay here in the barn for a bit. That begins at the end of January, early February, and lasts about a month. But of course, there are always a few late arrivals.
Today's other births also go without problems. For the first few hours, the baby goats are placed under a heat lamp. In a few weeks' time, there will be enough goat's milk left to make pélardon cheese. Rens Chablier's farm is on the edge of the Causse, a limestone plateau that surrounds the Cévennes. Both regions were declared UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 2011. This is the ideal habitat for vultures. Once extinct in this area, they were reintroduced in 1981. Even the rare bearded vultures have come back. There are estimated to be only 50 pairs still living in France. And also the black vultures, who, unlike other vultures, nest in trees. The reintroduction of 5 griffon vultures was a success story. There are now over 600 griffon vultures here in the Cévennes. And there are people who are committed to looking after them. In this bird sanctuary, they are preparing for the release of 2 griffon vultures. Émilie Ariagnello and her colleagues have been caring for them for several months. They have to be careful not to injure them now.
Of the vultures we have in the aviary at the moment, 2 can be released today. One comes from the department of Aude and the other from Auvergne. They were in a very bad state when we found them. The one from Auvergne was extremely thin. The other one was found under a power line. It had probably burnt itself on the line.
The two vultures don't understand what's happening to them. But today is the big day when they will finally regain their freedom. The car journey takes 1.5 hours to the Cirque de Navacelle, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Gorges and Cévennes. Nothing can hold back the two vultures. Relief for keeper Emilie and her colleague.
Today, they flew away very, very quickly. We are lucky to have good weather with warm air currents. Vultures only fly when there are warm currents that carry them upwards. We were also lucky that other vultures were there. They joined them right after we released them. They flew together like they were in a symbiotic relationship. That bodes well for their integration into the colony.
The vultures have returned to the gorges in the western Cévennes. In Saint-Jean-du-Gard, at the beginning of March, another landmark of the region needs some attention. The Cévennes Steam Railway. Enthusiasts can take a nostalgic trip on it between spring and autumn. The Krupp locomotive was built in Germany in 1937. A lot of work needs to be done for the start of the season in a few weeks. Stéphane Schneider succeeded in turning his passion into a profession. He is a railway enthusiast through and through. Ever since he was a child, he dreamt of driving steam trains.
The biggest technical challenge is to rebuild or repair parts that are no longer available on the market today. For us, that means using modern means to make old parts.
During the off-season, they specialize in restoring old wagons and locomotives here. Orders come from railway museums all across Europe. Their pride and joy is this locomotive built in 1917.
It is a European machine in all its glory. It was built in England in 1917 according to French plans. During the First World War, it was on the battlefields of Verdun. So this train was built in England to French plans, with a German tender, and has always run in France.
There is still time to tighten things up. The route between Saint-Jean-du-Gard and Anduze does not open until April. A few weeks later, at the beginning of May, finally, spring has arrived. The wild garlic is in bloom, and the little river Tarnon is calm only on the surface. Beavers are herbivores. They feed on tree bark, branches, leaves and herbs. Their territory can stretch from 500 meters to 6 kilometers along a river. depending on the food supply. If they sense danger, they strike the surface of the water hard with their tail. They can stay underwater for up to 20 minutes to protect themselves from enemies. Above Florac, in the center of the Cévennes National Park, rises the mighty Cours-Méjean. Few people live on the 340 square kilometer limestone plateau. It is a perfect habitat for the male green lizard. After molting, his head now blue, he searches for a mate. A special treasure is hidden on the shady northern sides. The lady's slipper orchid, one of the most magnificent orchids in Europe. The steppe-like landscape of the plateau is reminiscent of faraway Mongolia. And here, in the south of France, lives the rarest wild horse on earth, which once roamed the steppes of Central Asia, the Przewalski's horse. By the end of the 1960s, they were thought to be extinct in the wild. Only a few had survived in zoos. These foals were born a few days ago. Przewalski horses live in small families, one stallion with 2 or 3 mares and their foals. In 1993, a Swiss biologist created this 400-hectare sanctuary and brought 11 Przewalski's horses to the Cours-Méjean. Here the animals learn how to live in the wild. The young stallion picks up the scent of the mares. If they are ready to mate, he will bare his teeth. This is called the Fleeman response. Sometimes there are tensions. This stallion drives away competitors to protect his family. For a long time, it was believed that it was the Przewalski's horse that was depicted in prehistoric cave drawings. Today, we know this theory not to be true. Yet, genetically and anatomically, the Przewalski's horse differs from the domestic horse and was never tamed by humans. The nutrient-rich feather grass, called cheveux d'ange, angel's hair in French, is the horse's favorite food. Mutual grooming is an expression of the intimate relationship within the group. The mare signals the departure. So far, 22 Przewalski's horses have been taken from here to Mongolia to be reintroduced into their original homeland. The small village of Malbosc, on the foothills of Mont Lozère. After decades of rural exodus, the old stone houses are once again being lovingly restored. Above the village lies the mysterious plateau of Champs d'Abandon. After Carnac in Brittany, this is the place with the most menhirs in France. No one knows why 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, these stones were brought from Mont Lozère, many kilometers away. Perhaps it was a place of worship for various family clans. Since 2018, the street lights in most villages are turned off at midnight. This protects the night sky from light pollution. Mysterious worlds open up under the limestone plateau. In the east, where the Cévennes merge into the Ardèche, hides the stalactite cave Avendorniac. As fascinating for visitors as it is for speleologists. Stéphane Jaillet explores the role of underground watercourses and the influence of biocorrosion on cave systems.
We are here in a part of the cave where we find traces of ancient watercourses. That is, water that created this cave several million years ago. We call these round shapes, this horizontal gallery, a reference plane. This allows us to recreate landscapes based on a cross-section that we have here on site.
Stalactite caves are formed over millions of years. Nevertheless, scientists keep discovering mysterious changes in the rock formations that are not caused by water and limestone deposits. Instead, they are caused by former inhabitants of the caves.
Here we have calcite at the top of the stalactite. It is completely corroded. You can see that very clearly in the small white spots. This is a sign of bats. Eventually the top will completely dissolve. We have a lot of spots like this here, and that's what we call biocorrosion.
CO2 from human breath also damages caves and their prehistoric paintings.
This is where we do the scan.
To protect the prehistoric artwork, the researchers use laser scanners. This allows them to create a model of the cave accurate to a millimetre.
This technology is used in archaeological caves. It allows us to create a scale model. It does take time, but that's okay. We can continue the work in the laboratory.
Using these scans, the cave can be explored on a computer screen. Even scientists are only allowed into some caves with prehistoric paintings once a year, and for just a few hours. From the depths, back to the heights. Into the vulture paradise of the gorges of the rivers Tarn, Jonte and Dourbie. At the beginning of June, Thierry David and his colleague Renaud Nadal are on their way to the nesting sites of the griffon vultures. Each year at this time, they will ring around 50 chicks. Once they were poached, hunted or poisoned. Now everything is done to protect them. Gaining access to the nests in the cliffs is dangerous and must be prepared meticulously.
The birds are about 2 months old when we ring them. Between 50 and 60 days. Younger birds would be too small. They would lose the ring. And with the bigger ones, there is a risk that the chick will try to fly away when we come to the nest, even though it's not ready to fly. So it would be lost.
In the nest, 20 meters below, a vulture guards its chick. Thierry David is the first to carefully lower himself down on a rope. It's a vertical descent of over 100 meters. The parent bird has flown away. The chick is still unable to fly. Carefully, Thierry lifts it to one side so that he has space to work. One of the worried parents is sitting a few meters below in the rock face. It is cramped on the narrow ledge. The chick is stressed and squeezes into the nest. The two quickly get to work. 2 rings are put in place. One is made of metal, and the other is a larger plastic ring, whose number is easier to see with binoculars. The place and date of the ringing are accurately recorded.
Gauche. Ouais. Pas très bien passé sur Arte, quoi. Je sais pas pourquoi, mais...
Then they check for diseases and parasites and take some feathers for genetic analysis.
Là, c'est super, en plus, on voit les gestes et tout, on est parti d'autres du poussin.
Oh. Hop, ça ira. Une. Elle est jolie.
The ordeal is over for the chick. With a wingspan of up to 2 meters and 70 centimeters, griffon vultures are amongst the largest birds of prey in France. They still have a bad reputation, and some farmers object to their reintroduction.
For me, it's not justified. But you can maybe understand it because they eat dead animals. They are scavengers. That is what repels some people. They are great gliding birds. They form colonies and have movement and communication strategies. We can learn a lot from vultures. When we start studying them, these old negative images disappear. You have to learn to observe them.
Weather station on top of Mont Aigoual. Even in summer, it gets quite cool up here in the evening. The mouflon is another animal that has been introduced to the Cévennes. In 1954, 23 mouflons from Corsica were released around Mont Aigoual, mainly for hunting. Since 1970, with the creation of the national park, they have been given a protected zone. Their numbers have grown steadily since then. It is hot in August. The crystal clear rivers offer a place to cool down. There has been a lot of rain this year. That's why Patrick Carly's herd of goats can still find plenty of lush grass, even at the height of summer. But a more varied diet is needed to make the famous goat cheese of the Cévennes.
The secret of making a good pelardon is above all that the goats eat outside. Not only grass on the pastures, but also leaves from arbutus trees, chestnut trees and oaks. All this gives the typical taste that is transferred to the milk and then to the cheese.
Patrick keeps 64 goats on his small farm in the Vallée Française. He has been producing the small, soft goat cheese here between February and November for 15 years. The milking takes place twice a day. The scent of fresh goat's milk can be smelled everywhere. In his own small cheese dairy, a natural coagulating enzyme is added to the fresh goat's milk. Then lactic acid bacteria are added. 24 hours later, the raw milk has curdled into a curd-like fresh cheese. Patrick's mother, Nadine Carly, has her own technique that gives the cheese a special aroma.
I take out the top layer first, because the curd is not the same at the top and the bottom. To make all the pélardons the same, I spread the layer from the top first, and then I fill up the trays.
The creamy cheese is allowed to rest for another 24 hours. Now it is taken out of the shells and can be eaten as cream cheese straight away. But to become a creamy pélardon, it must ripen for at least 11 more days. Only then will it acquire its delicate flavor of herbs, chestnuts, and nuts. Summer is a busy time, and they can hardly keep up with production. Old railway crossing cottages, abandoned stations. This is pure railway nostalgia. It is early morning in Saint-Jean-du-Gard. Yannick Plantier has already fired up the engine of the train à vapeur de Cévennes, the legendary steam train of the Cévennes.
In the morning, we do a complete check, which takes about 30 minutes. We also do a check at each station. If there's no overheating, then everything's okay.
The preparation takes 2 hours every morning. Coal has to be shoveled in continuously to produce enough steam. Stéphane Schneider, the manager of the train à vapeur, checks the smoke chamber door. Today he rides along as a stoker. Steam trains have been his great passion since childhood.
We don't always go by the book here. You have to be in tune with what's happening. You check the color of the flames. If they are too white, there is too much air in the fire. If they are too yellow, there's too much coal. If the traction's wrong, you can feel it vibrating in your legs. Then we reduce the power. That's why it takes so long to learn everything.
They are ready to go. The Henschel D600, built in Germany in 1949, enters the station of Saint-Jean-du-Gard. A special feature? There is no turntable on the line. The locomotive will have to run backwards on the outward journey to Anduze. Young and old are fascinated. Yannick announces the departure. It is very hot in the driver's cab, just behind the boiler. Whether driving forwards or backwards, the enthusiasts' hearts beat faster. Stéphane Schneider is busy. The pressure in the boiler must always remain the same. The route is 14.5 kilometers long. It passes over 9 bridges and through 3 tunnels. The 104-meter-long metal bridge over the Gardon River signals the arrival in Anduze. Here, Stéphane has to uncouple the locomotive. Now it moves onto a side track to head in the right direction. But first, they refuel with 3,000 litres of water. The line was inaugurated in 1909. it had an important economic function for the region.
The line was built mainly to carry silk. The train went to Saint-Jean-du-Gard, loaded the silk and wood for the mines on the other side of the Grand Combe Valley, and from there the silk went to markets all over Europe.
In 1971, the State Railway Company closed the line. In 1982, it was reopened by railway enthusiasts, providing new opportunities to discover the Cévennes. The train returns to the starting point of the journey, the station of Saint-Jean-du-Gard. The line was built mainly to transport the silk produced here, for example, in the first industrial silk spinning mill in France. The Maison Rouge is a museum today. Built like palaces, these factories were a symbol of the wealth that silk production brought to the area. Opened in 1838, almost exclusively women worked here. The silk cocoons were dissolved in water heated to 80 degrees Celsius. Then the silk thread, up to 1,500 meters long, was spun. Claire Champetier is an expert on the history of silk in the Cévennes.
In 1709, a big frost destroyed the chestnut and olive trees, so people had to find other ways to make a living. The Cévennois began to plant mulberry trees en masse. Small farmers began to breed caterpillars to supplement their income from agriculture. At the same time, Protestant bourgeois families invested massively in the cultivation of mulberry trees and spinning mills. Thus, a veritable dynasty of industrial silk production was born.
In 1856, over 1,000 women worked in 23 factories in Saint-Jean-du-Gard alone. But then a parasite attacked the silkworms and the industry collapsed. Cheap imports from abroad, artificial silk and nylon followed. In 1965, the last French silk spinning mill closed its doors. Today, the great tradition of silk is making a small comeback in the Cévennes. Marion Chabanel breeds silkworms. And what she needs most of all is lots of mulberry trees. Because their leaves are the only food that the hungry caterpillars consume in vast quantities.
I pick the leaves according to the size of the caterpillars. That is, the soft leaves are for small silkworms that need nutritious leaves. The bigger the caterpillars get, the more I take leaves that grow closer to the stem, the leaves that are harder and a bit tougher. They are for the bigger caterpillars.
After a test run last year, this is her first real season. The silkworms are fragile. There can be danger lurking even in the leaves.
Ants are a big problem. When an ant discovers a caterpillar breeding site, it signals to all its friends, and they come and drag the caterpillars away, one by one. They're crazy about them.
The silkworms were traditionally bred in the attics of the old stone houses. Marion has set up her nursery in an outbuilding, all renovated by herself and finished the day before the first silkworms were delivered. A clean environment is a priority. Constant room temperature and ventilation are also important. The leaves must not be damp. Marion gets the silkworms from a breeder when they are 2 to 3 days old. At this point, they are half a centimetre long. They are extremely voracious, and in just a month, their development is astonishing.
Silkworms increase their weight 10,000-fold from hatching to pupation. That's in just 30 days. So they have to eat an enormous amount. The large caterpillars, who are getting ready to start spinning, have to eat every 4 hours. They need a lot of leaves. 10,000-fold. That's a lot.
The rate at which they eat is shown in this time-lapse. It sounds like a gentle summer rain. Marion and her partner Sébastien bought the house 5 years ago. There were already old mulberry trees on the property, but she is particularly proud of her new variety, a Japanese plant with large, nutrient-rich leaves. Like vines, they grow only waist-high and are easier to harvest. There are now 5 silkworm breeders in the southern Cévennes. The silk is bought by a small company in the area that produces designer objects and gossamer fabrics.
Thank you.
It is time for lunch.
Parce que je sais pas, tu veux?
With, of course, that delicious pilardon goat cheese. The silkworm breeding lasts until November, after which there are no more leaves on the mulberry trees for the caterpillars. Days later, they begin to spin their cocoons. In just 24 hours, they create a silk thread up to 1,500 meters long.
Silkworms are vulnerable. Moisture causes mold, viruses, bacteria, and fungi. We have to avoid that at all costs. That's why I harvest as many fresh leaves as possible when it's not raining and it isn't damp.
Even on beautiful August days, the weather can change very quickly. Over the warm Mediterranean Sea, the clouds soak up water in late summer. Southern winds push them towards the Cévennes. There they rain down in sometimes catastrophic storms. Small rivulets become torrents. In September 2020, 718 litres of water per square metre fell within 10 hours. Far more than in Paris in an entire year. Meteorologists have named this phenomenon as Cévennes. Fortunately, severe storms like this do not happen every year. A family of beavers is on the move along the river Ternon. Beavers are monogamous. They form a lifelong bond with their mate. They have 1 to 2 young per year. They are born between the end of April and the beginning of June. This one is about 4 months old. The little ones can swim from the start, only they have to learn to dive. Curious, it explores its new territory. On land, it is still a bit clumsy. But the little beaver has already learned where to find the tastiest young twigs. The mother is somewhere nearby. She has been suckling her little ones for 2.5 months. Carefree, the little beaver enjoys the fresh twigs. The mother still watches it. Even though beavers have few natural enemies, the little ones in particular can be attacked by large birds of prey or free-roaming dogs. That's why the mother makes sure that the little one doesn't stray too far on its own. If the territory is large enough, the little beaver will settle down near its parents in 2 to 3 years' time and start a family of its own. Autumn has arrived. In the forests around Mont Aigoual, it is the time of the deer rut. October is the time when chestnuts ripen. Until the 19th century, they were a staple food for farmers. That is why the trees were also called bread trees. Just as the seasons change the landscape, they also shape people's lives. Here in the Cévennes, in the unspoiled beauty of southern France.